Elizabeth Warren and Pete Buttigieg went at it on the issue of money in politics and big donors and corruption. And this got testy. This is the exact kind of debate moment stuff that we all wait for.
We can't have,
Thank you, Senator Warren.
We can't have people who can put down $5,000 for a check, drown out the voices of everyone else.
Thank you, Senator
They
Warren.
don't in my campaign, and they
Mayor
won't
Buttigieg.
in my White House.
Mayor Buttigieg, you had your hand raised. Can't help but feel that might have been directed at me. And here's the thing. We're in the fight of our lives right now. Donald Trump and his allies have made it abundantly clear that they will stop at nothing. Not even foreign interference to hold on to power. They've already put together more than $300 million. This is our chance. This is our only chance to defeat Donald Trump. And we shouldn't try to do it with one hand tied behind our back. The way we're going to win is to bring everybody to our side in this fight. If that means that you're a grad student digging deep to go online to PeteForAmerica.com and chip in $10, that's great. And if you can drop $1,000 without blinking, that's great too. We need everybody's help in this fight. I'm not going to turn away anyone who wants to help us defeat Donald Trump. We need Democrats who've been with us all along, yes, but we also need independents worried about the direction of the country. If you were a Republican, disgusted with what's going on in your own party, we're not going to agree on everything, but we need you in this fight, and I will welcome you to our side. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Senator Warren, 45 seconds to respond.
So the mayor just recently had a fundraiser that was held in a wine cave full of crystals and served $900 a bottle wine. Think about who comes to that. He had promised that every fundraiser he would do would be open door, but this one was closed door. We made the decision many years ago that rich people in smoke-filled rooms would not pick the next president of the United States. Billionaires in wine caves should not pick the next president of the United States.
Mr. Mayor, your response. You know, according to Forbes magazine, I am literally the only person on this stage who's not a millionaire or a billionaire. So if this is important, this is the problem with issuing purity tests you cannot yourself pass. If I pledge never to be in the company of a progressive Democratic donor, I couldn't be up here. Senator, your net worth is 100 times mine. Now, supposing that you went home feeling the holiday spirit, I know this isn't likely, but stay with me, and decided to go on to PeteForAmerica.com and give the maximum allowable by law, $2,800. Would that pollute my campaign because it came from a wealthy person? No, I would be glad to have that support. We need the support from everybody who is committed to helping us defeat Donald Trump. We would like to bring in everyone, but obviously, Senator Warren, I'd like to give you a chance to respond.
I do not sell access to my time. I don't do call time with millionaires and billionaires.
Sorry, as of when, Senator?
I don't meet behind closed doors with big dollar donors. And look, I've taken one that ought to be an easy step for everyone here. I've said to anyone who wants to donate to me, if you want to donate to me, that's fine. But don't come around later expecting to be named ambassador, because that's what goes on in these high dollar fundraisers. I said no, and I asked everybody on this stage to join me. This ought to be an easy step. And here's the problem. If you can't stand up and take the steps that are relatively easy, can't stand up to the wealthy and well-connected when it's relatively easy when you're a candidate, then how can the American people believe you're going to stand up to the wealthy and well-connected when you're president and it's really hard?
Judy. Senator, I've got to respond. Mr. Mayor, we're going to give you one more chance to respond. If you can't say no to a donor, then you have no business running for office in the first place. But also, Senator, your presidential campaign right now, as we speak, is funded in part by money you transferred having raised it at those exact same big ticket fundraisers you now denounce. Did it corrupt you, Senator? Of course not. So to denounce the same kind of fundraising guidelines that President Obama went by, that Speaker Pelosi goes by, that you yourself went by until not long ago in order to build the Democratic Party and build a campaign ready for the fight of our lives, these purity tests shrink the stakes of the most important election.
Judy.
Fight. Okay, to that last point, because this really gets under my skin. Mayor Pete keeps calling it a purity test, a purity test, a purity test, a purity test, a purity test. My dude, wanting you to not be corrupt, to not accept bribes, that's not a purity test. That's common sense. People aren't stupid. They know that if you're taking money from billionaires in wine caves or executives of major multinational corporations, they know that those people are not just donating to you because they happen to like your stance on abortion. No, there's also an expectation. I scratch your back, you scratch mine. When you're in the White House, if I call you up and I need a little tax break, I need a little subsidy skis on the side, you're going to hook me up, right? That's implied. That's implied. Don't treat us like idiots. Don't do it. Don't do it. It's massively disrespectful and it's condescending, and Mayor Pete is looking down his nose at you. When a purity test, oh, you want me to stop being corrupt? Purity test? There's a reason why people on the left are really only comfortable with small dollar donations. Now, there is don't get me wrong, there is a conversation to be had about what's the line. At what point does the money become corrupting? You know, if somebody gives you $50 and they're a teacher, that's not corrupting. $100, still not corrupting. $300, still not corrupting. They're a teacher. What do they want? But, you know, slightly better pay. Like, that would be you representing your voters, and your voters would be your donors in that instance. But where's the line where it's like, okay, now it gets a little iffy? You know, $1,000, the legal limit is $2,800 now. You know, it's theoretically possible you got a construction worker who saved up and is donating $2,800 to Bernie or whatever. And, you know, you could argue that's not corrupting. But as a general rule, you know, if it's corporate PAC money, it comes with strings attached. And when it's big money bundling dinners, it comes with strings attached. Because the big money bundling dinners is like, oh, let's invite all of these different employees from Citibank and, you know, sit around with them, and they'll each donate the max to you, and then that's a de facto bribe, so when you're in office, God forbid they need another bailout, you're right there to help them out. So there is a question as to what's the dollar limit, what's the line for it to be corrupting or not corrupting, but as a general rule, the more small dollar donations a candidate takes, the better. Now, Mayor Pete has gone all in on the old school model. He's acting like we never had this revolution where everybody's now aware of the corruption. And he acts like, well, I'm doing just the same thing that Obama did. Yeah, and that was a problem because Obama bailed out Wall Street to the tune of $14 trillion. Obama appointed his cabinet largely based off of recommendations from Citibank. So, yeah, that's a problem. You can't. And so when he calls it a purity test, it drives me crazy. Now, having said all that, I should theoretically take the side of Mayor Pete in this argument. Why? Because you could argue Warren is a bigger threat than Mayor Pete in the election overall. So, you know, I hope that, you know, Warren goes up in the poll, or I hope that Mayor Pete goes up in the polls and Warren goes down in the polls. But listen, as a matter of principle, I think she's more correct than he is. However, he does make a good point there at the end when he's like, I know you recently changed your mind on this, but hey, dog, you raised a lot of money when you ran for Senate in these same dinners that I went to, and then you transferred that money into the general election, into your your primary election for president. So you were for these big money fundraisers before you were against it. That's kind of true. That is kind of true. So he got you on that one, but it is fair to say that she's not doing those anymore. And I think that her track record, I mean, granted, you're just the mayor of South Bend, Indiana, but her track record in terms of standing up to Wall Street is much better than yours. And I would have way more faith and confidence in Elizabeth Warren to stand up to Wall Street and raise taxes on the rich than I would you. I have other concerns about her, like foreign policy, but she would be way tougher on these special interest than you would ever be. And I have no doubt about that. Now let's go through some of the other articles. He says, oh, we don't want to run against Trump with one hand tied behind our back. Again, that's not an adequate response when the concern about this money is that it's de facto bribes and it's corruption. If your response is, well, I don't want to have one hand tied behind my back, that's not a good reason to accept a bribe. You're saying, bro, I had no choice. I had to accept a bribe. That's not going to land with people. You have to actually address the point. And that's the problem. Like, this happens all the time in politics where people talk over each other's heads. Honestly, another example of it is on abortion. Because the right wing is like, or I should say many people on the right, because some are pro-abortion, but a lot of people on the right are like, oh, it's murder. And then on the left, everybody goes, it's a choice. But that didn't address what they said, because they said it's murder, so now you have to explain to them how it is not murder before you get to the other point about, I think it's a choice and here's why. But oftentimes, they'll just talk right over each other, oh, it's murder, it's a choice. Do you have a choice to commit murder? No, that's not a choice, that's an option. If something's murder, there's no choice there. You're not allowed to do it, full stop. So if they think it's murder, you have to explain to them why it's not murder first and then get to it. And it's like that the unwillingness to address the point directly is driving me crazy. We don't want to have one hand tied behind our back, so I have to take bribes and be massively corrupt. That's not a response to what the argument is. The argument is it's corrupt. It's a corrupting thing. So you have to address that first, and he doesn't address that. And then, of course, he says, well, Trump's really bad, which is, how many times are we going to hear that same nonsense? We get it. We know he's really bad. That's a given, bro. Now, what are you going to do about it? And then he says, I'll accept help from anybody. And even if somebody's like an independent, we need you. Even if somebody's a Republican, we need you. Pete, you ain't converting no Trump supporters. You ain't converting no Trump supporters, no Republicans, no nothing. You are like the stereotype of the elitist, out-of-touch Democrat. So, and it's funny because he does the same thing that Klobuchar does. Like, I'm from the Midwest, as if like that's enough to get Trump voters to switch to him. No, we know who does best with Trump voters, who flips Trump voters. Bernie Sanders, Andrew Yang, and Tulsi Gabbard. Those are the ones who flip them. And they also, well, at least in the case of Bernie, holds the base as well. So, he's uniquely set up electorally to be the most dangerous against the Republicans. So I just find it funny that he's floating like, I'll even accept support from Republicans. Ain't no Republican supporting you unless they're the CEO of a giant corporation. And then he gets to the wine cave point. That was a devastating point, and I'm happy that Elizabeth Warren brought it up because it is it's just the optics of it. The reality of it is bad enough because that's just one giant circle jerk of money and power and elitism and corruption. And, she brings it up. And I guarantee you, immediately after that debate, he was sitting around like, why did I do the Wine Cave fundraiser? I shouldn't have done the Wine Cave fundraiser. And to that, I respond to him, you're damn skippy you shouldn't have done that fundraiser because you're overreaching. He's just used to this spotlight now, and he doesn't understand that, like, no, now we're looking at you, son. We're looking at you. We're looking at what you're doing. And it says a lot when that's the company that you keep. That's the exact opposite of Bernie Sanders. Again, his average donation this time is $18. Mayor Pete is just... He's a caricature. He's a caricature of the out-of-touch Wall Street Democrat. So I'm happy that Elizabeth Warren brought up the Wine Cave, and I hope they keep bringing it up. Bernie Sanders surrogates, after the debate, were wearing a Pete's Wine Cave shirt. Oh, that's troll level A+. I love that stuff. And then the final points are, he got... People in the audience were like, ugh, when he made the point about, as you're getting into the holiday spirit, which I know is not likely... It's like every now and then Pete will his mask will slip. He reminds me a little bit of Christian Bale from American Psycho. It's like he's trying to keep it together, and every now and then the mask will slip and he'll just show his true colors. And I feel like that was one of those moments right there. He's like, as you're trying to get into the holiday spirit, I know that's not likely. And everybody's like, ew, like, what do you say? Like, what a random, weird, obnoxious, personal shot at her. Like saying, oh, you obviously have no joy and you're like stuck up. Actually, when I look at you, Pete, I think more of that than when I look at Elizabeth Warren. But even the audience was like, ugh. Like, it was a moment of like, that was uncomfortable. Why are you doing that? He's had this a few times. Like, one time he said to Beto, like, I don't need a lecture from you, of all people. Everybody was like, ooh. Because it's when the mask slips, he just comes across as, like, mean. And not mean in an entertaining way like Trump. Trump can be mean, but you're also laughing. He's just mean, and it's just flat mean. There's no, like, redeeming, charming quality about it. And then the final one is the personal wealth point. That's such a hacky point, man, because you totally switched the conversation. Nobody was talking about personal wealth. Nobody was attacking you for your personal wealth. Nobody on the stage was attacking anybody for their personal wealth. Never happened. Never happened once. The conversation is about bribery and corruption. Where are you raising your campaign funds from? So when you bring up, oh, your net worth is higher than mine, I don't care. Her politics are to the left of yours. Guys, FDR came from a wealthy family. He was famously called a traitor to his class. He also famously said that, I welcome the hatred of the Wall Street banks. So the personal wealth situation, that's not the end-all be-all. I mean, yes, you could say the billionaires who bought their way on stage, that's super concerning. But the thing that's concerning is that they bought their way on stage. That's the concerning part. It's certainly theoretically possible for somebody to be a billionaire and to say, I want social democracy, and I think you should tax me at a higher rate, and I want universal health care and free college and a living wage. That's all possible. Nobody brought up personal wealth on stage. You just brought it up. So she's talking about your corruption and your bribery and the fact that you're behind the scenes with these elitists and these CEOs and you're raising money, and who are you likely to represent? That's what she's talking about. And his response is, oh yeah, well, you're personally wealthy. I don't care. I don't care about that. Her politics are to the left of yours. So he's switching the conversation while trying to present it like he's not doing that. He's trying to act like, no, I'm staying on topic here. That's not on topic. The topic is campaign donations. How are you raising your money? And you're going to frickin' wine cave fundraisers where people are $900 bottle of wine and, eating expensive dinners and throwing money around, giving the legal max. And, you're likely to represent that crowd. So that's the conversation. Personal wealth. He's bringing up personal wealth to her. Oh, please. Bernie Sanders is worth more than Mayor Pete. And that's indicative of what? Absolutely nothing. Dickie McGee's acts. Because Bernie Sanders' policies would be much better for middle-class people, for poor people, for your average American. I mean, it's like, that shouldn't even need to be said, but apparently it does. And here's the point, guys. Mayor Pete, with his massively disingenuous arguments, they do not stop.